I remember the little things first. The way her hand brushed mine as we reached for the same cup in the kitchen. That tiny, accidental touch used to make me smile. Warmth would spread through me, a quiet comfort, a signal that everything was all right. But lately, those touches didn't feel the same. She pulled away, subtly, but enough that I noticed. Every time our fingers nearly met, there was a hesitation, a silent wall rising between us. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Stress, work, life, catching up. Maybe it was just me overthinking. But the gut feeling wouldn't leave. I could sense it deep down. Something had changed, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. One night, we were sitting together in the living room. The TV flickered faintly, casting light across her face. I reached out, as I often did, to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, something I'd done 1,000 times before. She flinched, pulled back slightly, and in that instant I felt it, the sharp, sudden pain of rejection. My chest tightened. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, just tired," she said. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They were glued to the screen. Tired. That word sounded hollow, empty, a mask I couldn't penetrate. Her shoulders, once soft and welcoming, now felt like walls I couldn't climb. For days, I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe she had a rough day. Maybe she was overworked. Maybe this was temporary. But a quiet, gnawing feeling told me I wasn't wrong. Something was off. Then, one Sunday morning, everything broke. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. I woke up before her. The sound was normal, a ringtone, a notification, but something inside me urged me to look. Normally, I would have ignored it, but that morning, I didn't. The message was simple, short, devastating. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." The sender's name was just one letter, E. A single letter, but it hit me harder than anything ever could. My hands went cold, my stomach sank, my heart raced like it was being ripped apart from the inside. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, but was probably seconds. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe properly. The world shrank to that one message. When she finally woke up, I was still sitting there at the edge of the bed staring at her phone. "Who's he?" I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper. Her eyes widened for a brief moment, then she looked away. "Just a friend," she said. "Friends don't send messages like that." My words trembled, though I tried to hide it. There was silence, heavy, suffocating. Then I saw tears welling in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, anything against the walls that suddenly felt like they were closing in. But I didn't. I just sat there. Because when you love someone truly, anger feels smaller than heartbreak. She confessed everything that day. How she met him at a work conference, how it just went too far, how she was confused, torn between feelings and couldn't stop it. She said she still loved me, and that she was sorry, that she regretted it. But her words, they couldn't erase the image I had already burned into my mind. Her laughter, his presence, that stolen intimacy that wasn't mine. The next few weeks were unbearable. We tried to talk, to fix things, to pretend nothing had happened. But love, once cracked, it doesn't look the same. Every dinner felt like an interrogation. Every hug felt rehearsed. Every smile was forced. And every night I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong or if love alone was ever enough to keep two people together. And then came the final straw. I came home early from work one evening. Her car was already in the driveway. The living room lights were dim. I walked inside, quietly, hoping it was just my imagination. It wasn't. Through the half-open door, I saw them, sitting close on the couch, her laughter, a man's voice. That sight, it tilted my world. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I just stepped back, walked out, and sat in my car watching through the window, feeling my vision blur with tears. That was the moment I realized I was no longer part of her story.
I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car, staring at nothing, feeling everything. The city lights blurred through my tears, turning the world into a swirl of colors I couldn't name. My hands shook, my chest ached. I kept replaying the moment over and over. Her laughter, the way he looked at her, the closeness that should have been mine. By morning, the house was quiet. She hadn't left a note. She hadn't tried to stop me. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she had already said her goodbye without words. I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, some essentials, my laptop, the things that mattered. Not that it mattered now. Nothing mattered. Everything I thought I had built, every memory, every quiet morning coffee, every late-night conversation, it felt like sand slipping through my fingers. When I walked out, she was standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red, lips trembling. The sunlight made her hair glow, and for a moment, I almost forgot everything. Almost. "Mark," she whispered, her voice breaking, "please, don't hate me." I looked at her for what felt like the last time. The woman I loved, the person I had shared a life with, the one who had promised forever. And now she was a stranger in her own house. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "I just can't love you the same way anymore." And then I left. The streets outside were cold, but it didn't matter. I didn't feel anything anymore. Or maybe I felt everything too deeply. I drove without direction, just moving. My mind kept replaying her confession. Every word burned into my memory. It just did. It was simple. It was devastating. It was everything I couldn't fix. The days that followed were a blur. I stayed with a friend for a while, sleeping on a couch that wasn't mine, eating meals I didn't taste. Work became my only escape, but even there I felt hollow. Emails, meetings, calls, nothing could fill the void. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, expecting a message, hoping it wasn't from her, dreading that it could be. I tried to talk to her once, over the phone, just to understand, to hear her voice one last time. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling. "I miss what we had," I replied. "But it's gone. We can't go back." And she cried. I could hear it. She begged for forgiveness, for a chance, But my heart, it had already begun to protect itself. Weeks turned into months. I moved into my own place. I furnished it slowly, carefully, trying to make it mine. But some nights the silence was deafening. I'd reach for the space beside me, and it was empty. The sheets felt too cold, too sharp. Every memory of her haunted the corners of the room. Her favorite mug, the sweater she left behind, the faint scent of her perfume that lingered on my pillow. I started to write again. Letters I would never send, thoughts I would never share. It helped a little, but it didn't heal me. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about surviving. And I survived. One evening, sitting on my balcony with the city lights sprawled beneath me, I realized something. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the version of myself that depended on her. The version that thought love could save everything. The version that believed forever was promised. I had to rebuild. I began small. Walks in the park, long runs, calls to old friends. Each step was painfully deliberate. I forced myself to feel again, to laugh again, to be angry, to grieve, to live. There were days I thought I would never smile, days when the weight of her absence felt like it could crush me. But slowly, imperceptibly, life seeped back in. A song on the radio, a memory that made me laugh instead of cry, a stranger's kindness that reminded me people could still be good. And one night, I realized something else, that heartbreak, as devastating as it was, had a strange gift. It stripped me bare. It forced me to look at myself, to confront my fears, my weaknesses, my desires. And in that rawness, I found strength. I wasn't whole yet. Maybe I would never be the same. But I was alive. And that was enough to start again. The night my marriage shattered, my world collapsed. But in the ruins, I discovered something I hadn't known before, that losing someone doesn't have to mean losing yourself. Sometimes it means finally finding the person you were meant to be.
The first few months after leaving her felt like walking through fog. I moved through my days on autopilot, shower, work, eat, sleep, repeating the cycle without really being present. Friends reached out. Some called, some texted. I'd nod, smile faintly, but most of the time, I couldn't bring myself to talk. Talking meant acknowledging it, facing the wound I tried desperately to ignore. Nights were the hardest. The quiet became louder than any city noise. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering tiny details. The way she hummed in the shower, the little laugh she had when she was embarrassed, the way she always curled up beside me during movies. I hated myself for remembering. I hated her for leaving. And yet, I still loved her, in fragments, like shattered glass catching the light in strange ways. One evening, about 3 months in, I found myself at the park near my apartment. I had no intention of staying long, just needed to move, to breathe. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. I walked aimlessly, the crunch beneath my shoes loud in the silence. A little girl was running past, her laughter pure and unburdened. For a moment, I felt a pang, a mix of longing and pain. That laughter used to sound like her, the woman I loved. But it wasn't her. I realized then that life was moving on, whether I was ready or not. And maybe I had to move on too. I began to push myself gently in small ways. I joined a gym, not for vanity, but to reclaim my body, to feel strength in my muscles instead of weakness in my heart. I started journaling every morning, spilling thoughts I hadn't dared say aloud. Slowly, I felt pieces of myself returning. Not the person I was with her, but me, my real me. Therapy came months later. I had resisted at first, thinking I could bear it alone. But sitting in that quiet room with a stranger who listened without judgment, I began to untangle the mess inside my mind. I cried more in those sessions than I had in months. I screamed at the air, cursed love, cursed her, cursed myself. And slowly, like water carving stone, the pain began to change shape. There were setbacks, of course. Days I'd wake up thinking I could call her, that maybe it was all a mistake, that maybe we could still fix it. Then reality would hit like a cold slap. She had already moved on, and I had to too. One rainy evening, a memory hit me like lightning. We were sitting in the kitchen, her head resting on my shoulder, and I had whispered, "I'll always be here." She had smiled, eyes closed, a soft laugh escaping her lips. I remember thinking that nothing could ever break us. That memory, once warm, now burned with a bittersweet ache. But instead of collapsing, I held on to it. Not to bring her back, but as proof that love once existed and that I was capable of it too. Months turned into almost a year. I started to rebuild my life with intention. I reconnected with old friends, some I hadn't spoken to in years. I traveled to places I'd only dreamed of visiting, letting the world remind me that there was beauty outside of heartbreak. Each experience, each new smile, each fleeting moment of happiness was a stitch in the fabric of the person I was becoming. And then came a quiet realization. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker below, I wasn't looking for her anymore. I wasn't hoping she'd call. The sharp pain that had defined my life for months had dulled into something softer, a memory I could hold without crumbling. I was learning to carry it with me, not as a burden, but as a chapter that shaped me. I still think about her sometimes. How could I not? She was a part of me once, a part I can never erase. But I've stopped wishing for what I lost. Instead, I wish for what I can build. For myself, for the future, for the person I'm becoming. Life had taught me a hard lesson. Love can shatter you, yes. It can leave you raw and bleeding. But in that vulnerability, there is growth. In that emptiness, there is space to rediscover who you are. In losing her, I found myself. And maybe, just maybe, that is the kind of love that lasts. Not the love that keeps two people together, but the love that teaches you to survive, to heal, and to rise again.
Spring arrived quietly, almost unnoticed. The city bloomed, flowers pushing through the cracks of sidewalks, people laughing in the parks, life moving forward with or without permission. I watched it all from my balcony, sipping coffee in the early morning light, and for the first time in months, I felt a calm I hadn't known since before the heartbreak. One afternoon, on a whim, I went to a small bookstore tucked away in a quiet street. The bell chimed as I entered, the smell of old paper and ink surrounding me like a gentle hug. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers over spines, lost in worlds that weren't mine, yet felt intimately familiar. And then I saw her. Not her exactly, but a woman, laughing softly, tucked into a corner with a sketchbook, hair falling over her face, completely absorbed in her own world. The scene struck a chord in me, a gentle echo of the past. For a moment I felt the old ache, the sting of remembering, but I didn't approach, didn't linger. I simply smiled to myself, grateful that life had given me this small reminder. Joy exists everywhere, even outside the love I had lost. Weeks later, I found myself volunteering at a local community center. I taught children basic computer skills, helping them navigate a digital world I once took for granted. Their laughter, their curiosity, their eagerness to learn, it healed me in ways I hadn't expected. I realized that giving myself to others, sharing my time and energy, was filling the emptiness that had once been consumed by pain. Then came the evening that changed everything again, not in a dramatic twist, but in a quiet, profound way. I was walking home through the park, leaves crunching underfoot, when a stray dog followed me for a few blocks, tail wagging, eyes full of trust. I laughed, knelt down, and patted its head. The simple connection, the trust in something so small and pure, reminded me of the foundations of love: trust, patience, presence. That night, I wrote in my journal, not about heartbreak or longing, but about hope, about lessons learned, about the strength it took to let go, about the beauty of finding yourself again when the world seemed to have forgotten you. I realized I wasn't broken anymore. I was whole, shaped by love, loss, and the courage to move forward. Months turned into a year. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Heartbreak never disappears completely, but it became manageable, beautiful even, in its ordinary, quiet way. I laughed more freely, I cried less often, and I loved myself enough to know that my story didn't end with her. It began anew every single day. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I stood at the edge of a quiet lake. The reflection of the world rippled beneath me, imperfect yet stunning. I whispered to myself, softly, almost like a prayer, "I am enough. I am healing. I am moving forward." The wind caught the words, carrying them into the world, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of loss. I felt the freedom of survival, the thrill of possibility, the warmth of a heart ready to love again, not blindly, not desperately, but wisely, fully, and bravely. And as the stars began to twinkle above, I knew the story of my marriage, of heartbreak, betrayal, and shattered dreams had led me here, to myself, whole, unbroken, and alive.